hitting the record button. So I just posted, and I'll post it again to after your name, if you're willing to facilitate and be recorded. I think we could do, well, if we did circles of 5, Peter, I think would that get us cover everything, everybody? And so we need the facilitators. I know Alex, Dean, and Susan, you're willing to facilitate the circles. Shoshona, okay, we have Dean, yes. Shoshona, just checking, yes. And Alex, you're willing to, great. So that's 4 of us. So if you can.
And also, could I, maybe, because I have to leave, I won't be able to stay during the thing, but could anyone help Edwin up with like the production manager so I can make them host and they can organize people in the room?
You know, you could make me host, and maybe Shoshona, would you be willing to just explain how the empathy circle works, and I'll divide people into circles. And yep, so.
Perfect, I'll do that.
And the topic is going to be whatever discuss your experience of the empathy circle, like whatever, just discuss the experience in the circle. Like, do you feel anxiety? Are you enjoying it? What is the sort of the nature of it? And also whatever is alive for you. So my facilitator, I mean,
yeah, I'm gonna make you a host right now.
Okay, so I can.
There you go.
Okay, and breakout room. So I'll handle the breakout rooms and put people into it while Susan Shoshona is explaining the process. She's doing the training too, so this is a good experience. Yay! Okay, take it away, Elle.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's session of the Empathy Circle on the Stoa. And what we're going to do in our breakout rooms is, I think I heard Edwin say there's going to be 5 people probably in each room. And so there'll always be an active speaker, an active listener, and there'll be 2 or 3 silent listeners. So we ask the silent listeners to stay engaged. Please don't play on your cell phones or start knitting. And so we want everyone engaged. And there'll be a facilitator, as Edwin said, in each group. And these will be 5-minute sessions. Your facilitator will let you know when your time is over. So when you start, you'll have an opportunity. Whoever decides they want to be the speaker will have 5 minutes to share. The topic of today is how this experience has been for you, or whatever is live for you. And you as a speaker will choose your active listener. And the active listener will reflect what they hear you say without commentary, opinion, or affirming, or, you know, adding to what you say. That's the goal. And please speak in small bites so that your active listener is able to grasp and respond as well as possible. And then after 5 minutes is up, your facilitator will hold up a sign, and that means that the active speaker needs to kind of wind it up. If you're in the middle of speaking or reflecting, you may, of course, finish. And yeah, and then the active listener will now be the active speaker, and you will choose your active listener, and we'll just keep going kind of around that way. If there's a person who hasn't participated, please choose that person, you know, so that same 2 or 3 people aren't always interacting. And Edwin, did I leave anything out?
Ask Dean. He's also doing the training. Did she leave anything out, Dean?
No, she summarized it pretty well. I mean, if people want to go through it again in the breakout rooms, we can do it in the breakout rooms. Or did I miss something?
Okay, so we'll have 5-minute turns, and again, our topic is whatever is just your experience in the empathy circle, or whatever is alive for you. And I'm trying to create the breakout room so people are kind of coming and going. So I'm a little.
And don't put me in one because
I didn't.
Yeah, okay, cool. And if you don't want to be recorded, just indicate that in your name. You don't want to be recorded. Only Edwin's group will be recorded.
Yeah, and I was going to join Dean's group. So it would be Dean facilitating, Susan, and Alex. So it'd be 3 groups. And so Ron, are you willing to be recorded? Yes. And then Nancy, Vima, Nancy, are you there? Or I'm not seeing Nancy.
It's Vimla.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, you said no. Okay, so I'm going to move you to another room. And let's see.
Hawk is always a yes.
Huck?
Yeah, there he is.
Oh, Huck. Okay, cool.
And Charles is a yes too. So
Would not like to be recorded. Diane.
Diane says a no. So I'll put no.
Okay. And Huck move to.
Ron asked, where's the recordings go? I think Edwin posts on his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
In his private empathy collection that he has stored
And they
somewhere.
also go on YouTube and Facebook too. We post them there. I can give you the link on my Facebook page. So I think we have it. We have Circle 1, Room 1, Dean, and I'll join you in that group, but you facilitate. And we have Huck, Laura. Oh, this is. See, that's the problem with the organizing. Who? I need one more person there. Okay, I think we're set. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, Dean. All right, we're ready to go then. And we're going to go for how long? An hour and a half, about. So it'll be about 20 till the end. At the end, since different time zones, then we'll come back and debrief. Okay, here we go. Open all rooms and see you there.
Charles, Hawk, and Edwin. Welcome to the circle today. Is there anyone that would like to have the process reviewed about how we will be having the 3 roles within the group, or is everyone quite comfortable with the 3-role system and the structure that we'll be undertaking?
I think I'm good.
The 3 roles, sorry, can you? Is that
There
what's
is-
described at the beginning?
The speaker who speaks, and they have a 5-minute allotted time period, and within that period they should break regularly to allow the person who is the reflective listener or the active listener to actually hear and show the person who's speaking that they actually understand what's been said without putting any of their own opinions or judgments onto it. And then when the time it goes up, in this time you'll hear a bleep, and if that goes on, then someone will draw to a close of what they're saying. Then when they finish speaking and they have been heard, they feel that they've actually been heard and understood by the reflector, they will then say, thank you, I feel heard. And then the reflector will become the next speaker. Then that speaker will choose a new active listener.
Okay.
Then the previous speaker will then become part of the silent listeners who are there to be current and follow the spiral of conversation around and around and be present so that the person who is speaking feels fully heard.
Okay.
Okay. Right then. Is there anyone that would like to speak first? I will be the reflector first. And who would like to start? Who feels that they have the most need to speak?
Yeah.
Hawk.
I did Empathy Circle about either September or October, so only one time. So this is fun to be in this space again. Thank you.
So yeah, could you speak then? Because seeing as you started,
Okay.
now the time is on.
All right. My name is Hawk, and I've had a very fun and interesting week. And so what I did this week was I spent time with my friends Evan and Laura, and we were discussing robotics and quantum mechanics and consciousness. And then like my heart chakra opened to where I'm like, oh, let me rediscover this passion I had as a teenager. Okay.
So I hear you talking about this is your first time in the empathy, second time in the Empathy Cafe, because you've been once before, and you reconnected with some people about some subjects that were very close to your heart, and it opened up your heart chakra, and it reminded you that you actually had these burning interests when you were a teenager.
Yes, yes. I was at NYU Poly for college, but that was not the proper environment to nurture my my love of spirituality and science.
So you were at NY College, but you
New York University.
I believe you felt that it wasn't the right place for you to nurture your spiritual requirement.
Yes, yes, I do feel heard, and so this curiosity in me kind of like this flower withered, it died, and I didn't know how to water this flower that I want to nourish, and seeing that most of science is very left brain, and they do not have a consciousness on war and money and their inventions, like pre-Iron Man Tony Stark. So it was really beautiful to be at the Stoa and to say, oh, there are people who care about what they invent and their effect on the world.
I'm hearing you talk about the fact that you're talking about the consciousness of materialism and science and technology pre-Tony Stark, and about how it was so enriching to find yourself within the Stoa and to connect with people that open up your heart chakra.
Yes, yes, and I had when I was younger, there were certain teachers at NYU Poly who were not kind to me based on whatever preconceived notions they had and biases they had, and so to be in this space to where I am accepted for how I appear, and at the same time for my beliefs, experiences, it's a beautiful space just to workshop ideas and stuff. Thank you.
Okay, I'm hearing that you encountered some bias, and you found that it was not the best place to be. But since you left NYU, you learned to carry on, and then you found the Stoa, and then suddenly that Stoa provided you the opportunity to thrive again.
Yeah. I'm reopening calculus books, and I even joined a physics Discord group where I'm aiding like people in high school with math, and it's really beautiful.
I'm hearing your passion come out about rediscovering the inner geek, where the physics can come out, the maths can come out, and you can teach someone. So you're really empowered.
Yes, because my experience with engineering college is there's a social strata of, oh, if you only know high school stuff, then you're useless, which is not true. There's a lot of people in high school who need the knowledge that I'm able to provide. So that's beautiful. Thank you.
So I'm hearing that you felt undervalued because your education wasn't up to requirements, but yet you're still finding that actually some of the skill sets you have are actually still very useful for others in that environment.
Yes, I'm heard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was perfect timing. 15 seconds left. I will ask Charles, can you be my active listener?
Sure, I would love to, Dean.
It'll take me a short while to collect myself because I get very upset when I hear about biases.
No problem. Take your time.
I'm still trying to overcome some of my educational biases that were part of the indoctrination process. But if we don't try, we'll never get anywhere, will we?
I hear you say that hearing about biases and the indoctrination process is a thing that deeply upsets you and is hard to process. But then you still want to confront this discomfort because you think it's important to try to break out of this prison, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, institutional bias is a horrible thing. But quite often the institutions are blind to their bias, and this is a problem. People are well aware of certain biases, but other biases they seem to let slip by and think, no, that's okay. But happily nowadays, people are becoming more and more aware of unconscious bias, which is a big dilemma for us all.
I hear you say that a lot of the institutions are the source of the bias, or at least they reinforces the existing biases, and they're not being held accountable, or people don't hold them accountable. People are not aware of that. And I think I hear you say that the situation might be turning a little, well, I mean, people don't give equal attentions to, they hold certain things accountable, but not the others. And then this unequal treatment is concerning to you.
Yes, I mean, in universities, thankfully, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of things moving. The institutions that I'm more worried about are things like large corporations rather than the educational environments, because the educational environments usually are the first ones that cotton onto things. And so sometimes they get attacked for being at the cutting edge of something, when in reality, they're actually blazing a trail.
I hear you say that certain institutions are doing better, such as the universities, where then they are actually putting themselves, they are opening themselves up to challenging the biases. But then other institutions, such as big corporations, are actually not participating in that and might be counterproductive to that by actually criticizing institutions like universities who are open to that.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I feel fully heard.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I would like to pick Deborah, if you would like to. Thank you very much. I think for me, I think I've joined the Stoa 2 weeks ago, and then I think just like what Hawk was saying, that it's a wonderful space to meet people who also share the values of actually wanting to break out from the kind of the toxic kind of like ideologies that we've been taught from the societies.
Okay. So you've recently joined the Stoa, and you sound really pleased to have found a space where you share other people's frustrations and about ideologies, toxic ideologies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then I think, initially I think in my mental state, I think it brings me joy at the beginning when I joined, and then but it also elicited other emotions in me, such as maybe shame or inadequacy, when I start to see how when I see other people being able to really articulate their ideas, or being able to think about the concepts very lucidly, or just having a better awareness of their own psyches, I think that makes me feel that it makes me feel some pressure that, oh, I hope I feel insufficient compared to them.
Okay, so initially you felt some joy at discovering this community, and now you're aware of being in touch with emotions and perhaps judging yourself against how you see other people being to articulate and be very lucid. Just some more uncomfortable emotions running alongside that for you.
Yes, and then that's part of the emotions, and then I think the other parts I'm starting to feel is also that is this wondering of maybe is that after seeing more of the problem, then it comes to a feeling of maybe feeling of a little bit of loss or feeling of intimidation, I guess, is that after is sort of like, like maybe like using Plato's like cave analogies, like going outside of the cave. I think it's your eyes hurt, and then you're bewildered by this. I guess this vast openness, because this is just not what we're used to, and also then thinking about our responsibilities to the people who are still in there. And what we're supposed to do with that, and then also the other question, which is, am I just in another cave? Meaning that I thought I'm getting out of it, but maybe I'm still in there.
Hey, can I feedback? So you're aware of feeling a sense of loss, and there was another emotion that you named, which I'm sorry I forgot. A feeling of loss. And that made you think of the story of Plato's cave, and I have to say I'm feeling a bit stuck now. Could you just repeat?
Yes. I think there are two other emotions. Maybe I'll just talk about one at a time. I think one of them is this feeling of loss, because one thing is understanding the limit or the ignorance that I have had before, and now seeing there are more different knowledges out there. This opening up can feel intimidating.
Okay, so along with that feeling of loss, there was a sense of your eyes have been opened, and then also feeling a bit intimidated as well.
Yes. And then the other part is also then thinking about my relationship with the other people, is that what is my responsibilities to them? Feeling like wanting to do something, but also not sure about what I can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's also a feeling of responsibility. What can you do to how can you be of service to these other people? And then you're also not sure how to be, what to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Deborah. I feel fully heard.
Can I choose Edwin?
Yep, listening.
Okay. Oh, right now I'm feeling, this is my first ever time in an empathy circle. I have watched them on the Stoa, and I do have some experiencing listening skills, having trained as a counsellor, and but it's been some time since I've been in that role.
So I'm hearing that you feel maybe a little anxiety about taking part in this because it's the first one, but you sort of prepared yourself, have watched them. You've also got a background in counseling, but it's been a while.
And this is I'm noticing this is very different to counseling, in that, it's very trimmed down. It's like honed in on just the reflections and the paraphrasing and feelings expressed, not trying to guess at or sense at or holding my own process, which is what I had to do as a counsellor.
So you're comparing sort of what we're doing here with the counseling that you've done. And here you're seeing that it's more interactive. It's just not you listening. I think that's what you're meaning. And the other is you're more honed in on just the reflection, the listening and the reflection, maybe not so broad evaluation, maybe. I'm not sure.
Well, so like when I was, it was children's counselling that I was doing, sort of play therapy type thing. And we were really had to develop our own sort of like listening to ourselves while listening to the other. So we'd be picking up things where we might be counter-transferring and stuff like that, whereas that's not required here. I don't think so anyway.
So in the counseling that you did with young people, that in the training, it sounds like you had to be aware of what was coming up in you, so you wouldn't transfer that to others. And in here, it's not that you're sensing that maybe it's not that big of an issue.
And I'm just, yeah, I'm feeling calmer right now. And that's just, you know, again, reminded me of how wonderful this process is. You know, being met, being heard has a calming effect on my nervous system.
So you're just sensing into your body, noticing that you're less anxious, you feel calmer, and it's you have an appreciation for the empathic listening process because it kind of helps create that calmness.
Yeah. And in amongst that is a bit of excitement that I'm in a group with you, Edwin.
So some excitement. Hey, the founder of the process. I get some excitement about that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And you know, excitement for what you're doing, and I just think it's incredible. You know, my mind was blown when you started talking about empathy tents. Empathy tents, brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, so your real appreciation for this work and the empathy tents, and sort of blown by all the possibilities of what you're seeing with empathy tents, etc.
Yeah, it does. It's because I mean, I came to the Stoa via Rebel Wisdom, and I found Rebel Wisdom via Jamie Will. Yeah, there's a whole sort of chain thing. And I can really relate to what Charles was saying about that feeling of intimidation and other people being so eloquent and articulate. And I'm not, I'm quite new to philosophy. I've read a lot of psychology and studied some neuroscience and stuff like that, just as a layperson. But yeah, I just find it quite mind-boggling, to be honest. And sometimes I worry that if I try and go down that rabbit hole too much, it's like, well, what's the practical use of this? You know, am I just looking at my own belly button? and I find this very grounding, because there's a practical application. You can see where it's going to do some good.
Yeah, so there's these other within Rebel Wisdom, etc. That it sounds like there's this sort of articulate, you know, maybe sharp sort of discussions, but that you're wondering if that can be sort of a rabbit hole. And here in the empathy circle, you're finding this sort of a more practical, grounded sort of a practice, and I'm hearing maybe some appreciation for this.
Yeah. It feels, well, it's embodied, whereas some of the YouTube discussions I look at feel quite disembodied. Yeah, to me.
Yeah, so some of the chat, the YouTube podcasts are more disembodied, you feel, and this is very more of an embodied process.
Yep, I feel very fully heard.
Okay,
thank you.
Great, thanks. Hawk, are you there? Okay, can I speak to you then?
Yes.
Yeah, I was really appreciating what Charles was saying, because I have seen that, you know, within Rebel Wisdom, etc., Stoa, I mean, there's just sharp people. I mean, they are very articulate, and it's like the minds are just, you know, clicking away, and it can be sort of intimidating, like, hey, can I do that? You know, so I really, you know, appreciate him sort of naming that, and I kind of have that sense too.
So hi, Edwin. I hear you're saying that in spaces like the Stoa and Rebel Wisdom, there's a lot of very intelligent and articulate people. And then even for you yourself, are wondering whether you fit in the space.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you hear all these people that say, well, if I was in a discussion, can I be so articulate and nuanced and, you know, insightful? And it's like, you know, am I going to be judged for, you know, how nuanced or whatever, you know, insightful I can be?
Oh, I hear you're you're wondering whether you'll be judged in a space like the Stoa, even if say the people are very open, you yourself are wondering whether you'll be accepted.
Yeah, and I think one part in that is you get sort of judged, like, oh, kind of keep your mouth shut because you're not so articulate, right? And so there's a kind of a fear of kind of being kind of, you know, put to the sidelines because you're not so articulate. And what I like about the empathy circle process is whatever you have to say, you will have your time to be heard. You know, it's like, doesn't matter what you say. And also what Charles was saying, I thought was very insightful in the sense he was speaking about his truth and his concerns. And I found it just very interesting because I have the same similar, you know, feelings sometimes. So, but I think having the empathy circle where you get your time and space to be heard, it just makes everyone sort of brilliant in a sense, because you get heard when people are heard, you know, there's sort of a brilliance and beauty in that.
So I hear you're agreeing with Charles and Deborah about being heard. It almost sounds similar to like Jim Carrey or Robin Williams going, are they hearing the screen version of them, or are they hearing the actual self that does struggle with regular people life?
Yeah, it said here, now you're listening to me, you know, and it's, I get to be heard to my satisfaction, you know, it's like, and I think there's something really important to that in society, that we get heard. Just whatever we have to say, that knowing that I'll be heard has a calming effect. I think that's maybe Deborah's, you know, you go into a new group, will I be rejected? You know, will I be judged? You know, will I be sidelined? You know, it's painful to get that social rejection. And here it's like, you will be heard to your satisfaction, you know, whatever you have to say. So, yeah. So I'm just kind of comparing, you know, just, I think it's that practicality that Deborah is talking about. And that energy is very healing, I find.
So I hear you're saying that the energy of this space called the Stoa is very healing because people listen to each other. And in certain cultural groups, in most cultures around the world, it's very much be seen and not heard, especially maybe like in Asian culture or cultures that do not listen to women and stuff. And
well, yeah, that's throughout all of society. There's that, you know, you get people's voices get marginalized. So, and the other thing was what Deborah was saying about counseling. I think that's something that's missing in counseling is it's not mutual. That to have mutual, like the counseling, I think that's because a counselor listens to someone and the person is being heard, but they're not learning to listen themselves or to take that skill to have like empathy circles with their family or friends. So I think this is sort of like a next step to counseling that I think is more sort of integrative, and it's more full, more empathy full, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. So I hear you're saying that therapy needs a 2020 update, a 2000s update, not the 1900s old model of sleep on a couch and have Freud write down your dreams.
Right.
And so basically, what I hear is almost like more like a Robin Williams model, like Good Will Hunting, where at first Will wants therapy, but at the end of the film, Sean, Robin Williams' character, also gets therapy. Both people are working to work on each other, or at least listen to each other, and there is closure for both people. And maybe your experience and other people's experience with therapy, who is the therapist for the therapist?
Yeah, and that the therapist could be training the client into how to do empathy circles so they can just use that skill, you know, on their own, and to get that listening, mutual listening. So they get better at listening to others too, not just sharing their problems. Okay, got it. I'll end there. So that was my end of my turn. So you're up, Huck.
You got to reflect, Huck.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would like Charles.
Huck, could you reflect what you just heard, the last part of Edwin's?
Oh, yes. Edwin was speaking about it was the end of his turn, and he would like he would like to see this empathy circles used in therapy more. Hi, Charles.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay. It's interesting to hang out with another person from Asian culture in general, because I grew up in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and there's very a few of us compared to New York or California.
I hear you say that you find it, I guess, a positive experience to find someone who shares your cultural background. We're both Asians. And then especially given that you don't get that much from maybe your hometown, which is Atlantic City, where then the Asian populations are not very common.
Yeah. And it was a beautiful experience to be in San Francisco this year for about 2-3 weeks, where I saw Asian people work at CVS and regular day-to-day jobs like it's nothing. Whereas in Atlantic City, New Jersey, the jobs that my parents could get coming fresh from Vietnam would be like fresh off the boat, airplane, all that stuff. Being a fresh immigrant would be like the casinos. So it was abusive work, but they're still grateful to have a house and home and all that. Yeah.
I hear you say that your experience at San Francisco, however short it is, still filled you with this sense of, again, a positive feeling, because you see that your identity is normalized in different kinds of jobs. Seems like it's just normal for Asian people to work whatever kind of jobs that there is, whereas that draws a sharp contrast to your experience at your hometown, where then the Asian people may feel a little bit out of place, and then there's only very few designated places where then they're supposed to work at, and those places can be abusive.
Yes, in 2018, Stockton University had a school play about the Atlantic City casinos, and basically there was a lot of abuse towards women. There were racial slurs, vomiting, peeing, pooping, because the gambling addiction is so bad. People are almost like glued to their chairs. Yeah.
I see that you're saying that in 2018 you watched a play from this university that actually reflected the reality of the toxic environment in the casino scenes, where then the customers are their weakness to gamblings, to addictions, are being exploited, and at the same time, though, the environment is very toxic. There's racial slurs, and then maybe other bad practices that are not good, not only for the customers, but also for the people who are working there.
Yeah, and then that gave me empathy for my parents to say, oh, that's how dad changed from age one. Because before age 5, we just came to America, but before my dad started working in the casinos, he was generally much bubblier for a Vietnamese man. So that's like relatively bubbly, but still. And just to see how much the casinos have worn him out. And it's very similar to Homer Simpson working at the nuclear power plant. Yeah.
I hear you say that you find a renewed or a deeper understanding and empathy for your parents' situation, especially your dad, where then you saw how this toxic environment had a negative effect on him, where then he was this more bubbly man, that his bubbly manner kind of get worn off by the toxic environment. And that you also connected that to the Homer Simpson plot from where then he, by going to this toxic environment, where then maybe just sort of like chipped off his identity, or reduced him from where he was before.
Yes, and there's an episode about why Homer has stayed at that toxic workplace for so many years. It's a 30-year show over. So I mean, I guess in our lifetime, in our real world years, that's like 30 years of abuse. But do it for Maggie. By the time he had his third daughter, he realized that she was more important than his dreams of bowling, or maybe like taking care of me and my baby brother, who's graduating from Cornell next May in engineering computers. That like putting my dad putting his kids before himself was more important in the long run. Yeah.
I hear you say that you also reflect on this other episode where they dives into Homer's motivations of actually sacrificing himself, staying in that toxic environment as a sacrifice for his children, that he prioritized his children's well-beings before his own needs. And then you see a parallel between your dad and Homer too, as you see that your baby brother is recently was able to achieve this thing of graduating from Cornell in this more esteemed, socially esteemed discipline, engineering. And then that is based on the sacrifice that your dad made. Yeah.
Yes, I'm heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to pick Dean as the next. Yeah. So I think I want to share. I think Hawk's saying definitely resonates with me, and then I think I've been considering my relationship with my parents as well, and I think just this year, maybe because of COVID slowed me down, I was actually able to reflect more and connect with them more. I found that, and I was able to get better in touch with them this year.
I'm hearing you talk about your resonance with Hawk and about how actually this time of slowing down with the COVID crisis has actually allowed you to reconnect with your parents.
Yes. And I think, what the big change I find now as I'm communicating with them is actually to more engage with them in two more levels that I wasn't really doing before. Previously, I think we just talk about practical things like livelihood, money, health, all these very practical things.
So you've discovered these two new levels within your relationship now with your parents, whereas previously it was all about career, money, and practical things.
Yes, and one of this level I think is the emotional level, or the similar emotional level, and I think is about helping them labeling their emotions and helping myself labeling my own emotions. Like after maybe we can still talk about the practical stuff, but we also talk about the emotional effect it had on us, and then labeling that and kind of facilitate that conversation with them.
So I'm hearing you express a certain level of emotional intelligence now that you're with this new communication with your parents. And you're learning to identify the emotions that were invoked previously and put labels upon them.
Yes. And then I think the other level is engaging with them in a more kind of like a existential meaning, like talking about the meaning of life with them, talking about the values, because I think that's a thing that maybe people are not able to, like maybe people don't articulate about it, but then it's nevertheless, everybody think about it all the time in different ways. And then this was something that I neglected to do before. I was not aware of doing before, but now as I start actually talking to them about it, I find our connection become even better or even deeper.
So the third level is on the existential level, upon the game behind the things that normally going on. Sorry, not a game. I do apologize. That's a projection of my own meaning in there. That third level of understanding of what's actually going on deeper rather than just on the emotional and the intellectual. So you've got this existential connection that's been facilitated by this slowing down, and the growth in the communications between you and your family.
Yes. And I think that going back then to kind of what Edwin was saying and what Deborah was saying, which when it comes to the limitations of traditional school of therapy, maybe that the therapist not actually, if the therapist takes a very cerebral approach and not quite engaging with the clients on their maybe emotional level or the existential level, then there is then the connection is just not as the connections it cannot be formed as deeply as whereas if they do maybe engage with them on those channels.
Okay, so I'm hearing you saying that the current form or modality of counseling is on an intellectual level, whereas as you can see already what's happening in the empathy circle is if you connect on that deeper level with, say, existentially or emotionally, you can then actually gain a better insights to the person rather than just doing it through the intellect.
Yes. And I think what I do find hopeful is that seeing the change in myself and my relationship with my family, that makes me hopeful that other people will also be able to do it, because I never imagined myself being able to do this before. So I think I feel hopeful from my personal experience level.
So I'm hearing you talk about this realization that actually, even if you can do this, other people hopefully can do this as well, because you didn't think you'd be capable of it, but you actually discovered that you are capable of it. So you're holding out this hope that other people may have this opportunity as well. Yes.
And the other part is also then seeing the advance of I think Stoa is another level, is another example where then I do see people, like Edwin started actually organizing this kind of like events, then to provide the space, this kind of resources for people to actually engage in this level.
So you were talking about these new spaces being found, and you found some of these new spaces in the Stoa, and then you were mentioning about Edwin providing the facilitation for this new way of communicating with each other.
Yes, thank you very much. I feel fully heard.
Thank you, Sean. Deborah. I'm still reeling from Charles's talk about the Plato caves. And is he in a second cave? I always have that feeling. And the only time I don't have that feeling is when I'm in a circle, because the conversation will keep going deeper and deeper and deeper as it goes around the whole group. So that I realize actually I'm not in a cave, I'm in a circle, which is different to being in a cave.
Okay, so you're quite blown away by Charles's talk about the cave, and you often find sometimes you find yourself wondering, are you in a second cave? And then when engaging in these circular practices, you realise you are able to go deeper and deeper, and you are in fact in a circle.
Yes, and this practice of having this space to actually listen in silence, I found at first suffocating, but I've learned that it's actually so empowering, because you actually get to hear what's being said instead of worrying about what you're going to say, which is a totally different way of appreciating your fellow human beings.
So initially you felt quite suffocated by the silence of listening, and then you discovered how powerful and relevant that can be, how giving and nurturing that is.
Yes, because quite frankly, I can hear myself all the time, but I can't hear other people all the time, can I? So
it turns off your voice.
Yeah, giving space to other people gives me the capacity to hear, rather than actually, how can I compete? I'm very much no longer competitive modality. I was brought up from a legal family in a lawyer's environment. Everything's gladiatorial, bomb, 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 bomb. I find that so persona non grata. I'm definitely no longer in that modality. I much prefer the modality of the non-violent communications, although I am no good at it because I keep mucking up.
So I hear you're really appreciating this newfound ability to really hear what someone else is saying and turn off your own thoughts, especially coming from a background of lawyers where it's all about presenting an argument and getting your bit in there. So it's good to be able to turn that off and be fully there for someone.
Yes. And I no longer have the fear of appearing like a fool, because in reality, it is the fool that's truly wise, for he knows he's a fool. Whereas the wise who thinks he's wise is actually the real fool, because he's not wise at all.
Okay. I'm a little bit confused. So you're not feeling so foolish. It sounds like you're just feeling more comfortable.
Yeah, no,
maybe.
I am relaxed, whereas before I used to be tense. Was I worried about, am I going to look stupid? Now I realize it's not my problem. Someone thinks I'm stupid, it's their problem, not my problem.
Yeah. So you've been able to separate out this feeling of tension, you know, were you going to do it wrong? Were you going to look silly? So it's enabled you to relax in to being and to being comfortable.
Yeah, which is actually quite good, because when I'm learning the counselling practices myself, the 3 different ways of counselling, and all that sort of stuff. And I found that the skills I've learned doing the empathy circle work so good when I'm doing the counselling, because I've learned that skill already, not to project my own understandings or my own questioning, unless it's an open question to try and open up someone else.
Okay, so you're currently training in counselling, and you found these empathy circle practices really helpful in that. It's given you a bit of a head start in that you can stop yourself projecting, asking leading questions and just asking appropriately open questions.
Yeah, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. Dean, can I ask you to listen? Is that allowed?
Well,
is that
anything? You are the chooser.
Yeah, okay.
It's your choice who you want to reflect to you.
Okay.
I can't say you can't you?
I just couldn't remember because there's a certain process for this. I just needed to remind you. Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. So I've heard so I'm hearing Charles mentioned a thing about therapy, questioning, and I'm just wondering if he was talking more about psychoanalysis, which tends to be a bit more intellectual. My experience of counselling training was with children, so it was very it wasn't really a talk therapy, it was more play-based. You know, we just worked entirely through the metaphor, playing dolls, flinging paint around, doing a lot of work in the sand tray, very emotion focused. And for some kids it would have been if you'd gone down that interpreting road, it would have just done so much damage, because they needed the safety of the play, the safety to stay in the metaphor.
So I'm hearing you saying you weren't doing the psychodynamic type of counselling. You were just doing the enabling the children to do their expression which provided them a safe space to allow their emotions out without actually loading them up with analytical processes that could actually be very damaging to them.
Yeah. And I just it's just made me think. I mean, in my own therapy journeys, I mean, I've had some time with doing Gestalt therapy, and had quite a long-term relationship with a psychodynamic humanistic. Wasn't analytic. It was very, but I just since COVID, and we were trying to do it over Zoom, and you know, sometimes I would work in this with the sound tray or art, and it was just so impractical, and it just wasn't working. It was frustrating.
So I'm hearing you mentioned the Gestalt process, and you're talking about your partner who was doing a humanist psychoanalytical type of practice, and your frustrations at actually trying to do your work via the medium of Zoom, where you're trying to do your sandbox work, which is very hard because you're having to do the stuff rather than watch the child do it there and then. So you're seeing a small part of it rather than the whole of it. So you weren't getting the whole picture. Oh,
no, what I meant was I was explaining about my own process. So I've had a long-term therapy working relationship with a woman, and sometimes I did the sound tray. I used the sound tray in the therapy, and she would facilitate me when we were trying to do this over Zoom, and it wasn't working.
Okay, so I'd just like to clarify that it was actually your counselling one-on-one, and the miscommunication that wasn't working over the Zoom rather than a partnership.
Yeah. So I've decided to take a break, and I have actually just found, and I also decided I wanted to work with a male, because I've never done any one-to-one therapeutic work with a male. And I found someone who was willing to work outdoors in a woodland kind of lake park setting. And so we met for like an assessment of each other, see how it goes. And it was fantastic. I'm really, really excited about going forward. He suggested actually taking a break, which I think is a good idea. So just, you know, leaving one therapy and starting another. I just need some processing space first. So we're going to pick up again after Christmas.
So I'm hearing your frustrations at your previous practice no longer working. So you thought you'd have a total change and you'd try a male counsellor, and rather than doing it indoor side, which would have been frustrating again, you discovered someone that actually works out in the nature and actually works out in the woods. And you had your first initial meeting, an introduction, but he was of the opinion, as probably you were, that you actually needed for the waters to settle before you started working them again in a different therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I have a real sense of excitement about it. I felt really, really comfortable with him. Yeah. And it's good. It's going to be good.
I'm hearing you had this really good rapport, and you're looking forward to working with him.
Thanks. I feel fully heard.
Thank you, Deborah. Hock, you've been quiet for a while. Oh. I've just had in my mind's eye the Homer analogy. We've talked about Plato and Homer, but we talked about Homer Simpson, and that's what suddenly made me chuckle. But that's what I love about the Stoa community. There's this vibrancy and diversity.
I hear that you're saying that you love the analogies of Plato's cave, and Homer Simpson, and the Stoa is a beautiful place to use cultural analogies to describe the human condition.
Yeah, I think that's what I said. I don't know if I quite said it like that, but yeah. Because there's Plato and Homer. Homer's another famous philosopher. So there's this Plato, Homer, but then this Homer's twisted to be actually this downtrodden, spirit-crushed man because of the realities of the soul-sucking toxic system. Yeah, so that's why I was chuckling, because there's this great philosophical thing, and it's put in a cartoon. Sometimes the best vehicle for deep meaning is a disarming vehicle. So a cartoon's quite a disarming vehicle, isn't it?
I hear you saying that cartoons can sometimes be the best expression of both the human experience and the conditioning and all that, because it's disarming, it's very kid friendly, and like Homer Simpson is a very Sisyphean character, rolling the boulder up and down every day and getting nowhere.
I didn't quite use the terminology of Sisyphean, but yes, I can see where you're coming from there. But no, I didn't mention Sisyphus, although I can understand the analogy that you would draw from that. But yes, Sisyphus, the Sisyphean task of having to do the same pointless thing day in, day out, is definitely soul crushing. That's why I think bullshit jobs should be banned. Jobs that are absolutely rubbish and just kill people should just be banned, because there's no real need for them in reality. It's just the way our capitalist system is structured that it enables this thing to carry on, as far as I personally perceive.
In discussing Sisyphus and the ruddiness, the dullness of capitalism and day-to-day labor, you believe they should be banned, and this kind of work is so soul-crushing that it's almost like it creates its own health crisis. And from an experience, and from a previous conversation, you mentioned having parents who are lawyers, and from an experience of mine, very briefly, I dated a girl whose parents were lawyers. So I know now, I understand why she was combative. And I hear you having relief, not having to be combative. Yeah.
Yeah, but like that's not reflecting what I just said there, is it?
It's not. Okay.
Can you reflect what I've just said, please?
You said that day-to-day work should be banned because it's so boring. And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and basically the only person that profits from it is not the person that's doing it, but the person that provided the opportunity, the gracious opportunity with his money to enable the other person to work as a slave for them.
I hear you're saying that the person who only profits from capitalism and these boring day-to-day jobs are the people at the top.
Yeah, and we need to reinvent our way of working so that we value each other on a different level, rather than just, oh, how many zeros have you got to your name? I think this is a very divisory and foolish way of judging people's worth, because I've met many a rich man who is dead on the inside, but thinks himself the best thing since sliced bread, and I find that a shame.
So what I hear is that you've met many wealthy people who are like Scrooge from Christmas Carol, who they may have wealth on the outside, but inside they're like spiritually or emotionally dead. And it is not good to measure a society and a people by the zeros in their name, by the wealth in their name, and actually just to see them just for who they are.
Yeah. Because to actually judge someone by the amount of zeros after their name is just so small-minded. It's just using one dynamic. We are far more than just one-dimensional beings. We're not one-dimensional entities. We are three-dimensional, four-dimensional, fifth dimensional.
So what I hear is that you're saying that the human experience, that we are not this body, we are like the soul that can live in multiple dimensions, infinite dimensions, third, fourth, fifth, and beyond.
Yeah, and then so therefore to get hooked into this way of assessing our worth merely as corporeal wealth is so limiting. It's a shame. Yeah.
You're saying that corporeal wealth that nourishes money, objects that can nourish the body is a limiting way to look at life, because the soul is much more.
Yeah, thank you. I fully heard.
Okay. I would like to speak to Deborah.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Hawk.
I started therapy in 2012 with my friend. We'll call her Aunt Sally, and she does like a child therapy and stuff. So that was very healing, because my parents were absent growing up because both mom and dad had to work to feed a family of four in America.
Okay, so I hear you say you started in therapy, and you referred to her as Aunt Sally in 2012, and it was really healing because your parents were absent a lot when you were younger.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and just to be heard by somebody for the first time in my life was very healing. And when Mumia Abu-Jamal talks about father hunger, explaining the difference between his generation of the 60s and the kids growing up in the 80s and afterwards, that maybe some of the confusion, anger, and violence that he saw in the younger generation was from father hunger. And I guess the confusion that I experienced is also equal, both father hunger and mother hunger.
Okay, so it felt really healing for you to be heard in this therapy space, and this notion of father hunger, which your own father had expressed to you, you could also identify, and as well a mother hunger because of their absence.
Yes.
Because of their absence.
Well, Mumia Abu-Jamal is a political activist. You type in MUMIA online, you'll find him. He's been in jail since like the 80s for a false crime. There's a whole story about that. But anyway, he does a lot of commentaries on politics and society, and just to hear somebody speak about his experience being in the Black Panthers and somehow that connected to my soul to say, oh, there is somebody out there, even if they're in prison, who can relate to my experience.
Oh, okay. So I misunderstood. It wasn't your father. It was this. I didn't catch the man's name. Sorry, but
Mumia, MUMIA.
Mumia. Okay. So listening to his experiences really resonated with you, mm-hmm. and was helpful.
Yes. And then there's a huge question in the generation born in the 90s who experienced like 9/11 and all that. There's like a mother hunger, because moms, it's beautiful that women are working. However, there's almost like but if there's no grandparents and every child has a babysitter, then there's almost a disconnection from family roots.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it spoke to just a hunger of not only fathers but of mothers, and sort of going back through the generations, and it's kind of like a disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
A disconnection.
Yeah, and then there's a huge question of why society labels people who are called boys and men, why it's a failure to launch, or very slow adulthood, because there's absence of both the mother and father in the home, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so I heard you use the term a failure to launch, because there's a missing of that parenting time,
Mm-hmm.
a missing of that nurturing needed to take from boys to men, to get from boys to men.
Yes, and luckily for my parents, they're physically home when they can, according to their work schedule. However, there's an emotional absence, probably because of how exhausting the casinos are.
Okay, so for you personally, although they are there physically, you're aware of an emotional absence, possibly caused by their exhaustion of their jobs working in the casino?
Yes, and but to see my parents in Vietnam and to see them enjoy like traveling to Vietnam and being with their biological family, I'm like, wow, this is the part of my parents I've never seen in America.
Okay, right. So you're really surprised, quite amazed at seeing your parents and the joy they got from connecting with their parents.
Yeah, and their siblings in Vietnam. Yeah,
and their siblings. Mhm.
And so luckily there's the internet, so they're able to have video calls with friends and family through like the phone, like FaceTime and stuff. And luckily for me, after Barack Obama visited Vietnam on May 23rd to 27th, 2016, and he apologized to North and South Vietnam, and my dad cried, my mom cried, I cried, like all of Vietnam cried. It was very healing. It was the first, he was the first sitting U.S. president to apologize for the Vietnam War, which he was 61, and he was born in 61, so he was a baby during that time, but he took the responsibility on himself, and that's beautiful. And even more importantly, Google's like, oh, we can make money off of paying actual Vietnamese translators to translate Vietnamese to English very well.
Okay, so you're really, the birth of the internet is enabling this reconnection, and that's really great. And then when Barack Obama apologized for the Vietnam War, that meant so much to you and your parents and all the people affected by that. And I didn't quite catch the last thing about Google.
Google realized they could make money from translating Vietnamese by paying a Vietnamese person instead of a robot.
Okay, so Google could make money from Vietnamese translators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to gallery view. So Charles, can you listen to me, please?
Yes, I would be glad to.
Thank you. Yeah, I've noticed I'm feeling more confident now in my in my empathy skills. So it's, yeah, having a few rounds. I hit 57 this year. I know it's only a number, but I've just been aware this year of not, my memory not being quite so good, coupled with the fact that I probably have been diving a bit too deep with all this philosophy and perhaps trying to understand things that I don't know, perhaps are a bit beyond me, trying to take in too much information. So what I'm saying is I've been feeling a lack of confidence lately.
I see. I hear you say that with your new engagement in philosophies, you feel that it can be quite taxing on you, and also with you realizing your age, you are now maybe realizing this association with this taxing effect that it had on you might come from the new engagements and also from the age. So you're feeling that taxing effect on you, and then, but also you're saying that through doing a few rounds of this empathy circle, you seem to, you were able to feel more comfortable about it. You gain back a little bit of that confidence to feel more comfortable about it.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing that back, reflecting back that reference of age. I know that's, memory loss can come with age, and also know the brain is incredibly plastic. And I was hearing or reading somewhere recently that I think it was Dave Snowden, who was on the Stoa. You know, around about the age of 50, you can get a second burst of replasticity, and like, yay! There's hope for me yet.
I hear, yeah. So I hear you say that even though traditionally maybe we think that, you know, with age that, you know, it can affect memory in a negative way, but also there are new discoveries now that actually shows that there are also other good things or hopeful things that can be happening with as we age. So that gives you joy, and that gives you hope. That gives you new joy and hope.
Yeah, yeah. But the concerns I do have about my memory, I think one of them is definitely a lack of good regular sleep. I have a really haphazard sleep pattern, which I obsess about as well. I measure it on my Fitbit, and then I look at it every morning. How have I slept? When really I just need to perhaps throw away the Fitbit and just check in and think, you know, well, how do I feel? Yeah.
I see. So I hear you say that you are you realize this you might be unsatisfied with this. You're perceiving this issue. You feel like there's an issue with this age, with the change of your memories. And then you realize it, and then you are trying to work with it. And then you're trying to examine yourself to see what could possibly contribute to it. And one of the factors you see was you theorize that it might have to do with your sleep, that your sleep habit, you are not quite satisfied with your sleep habit. You think it might be haphazard, and you are trying to take, again, you're trying to work with it by working with the Fitbit. But you also see that as you're trying that out, maybe that makes you even more conscious or in a negative way about it. So now you're also thinking about alternatives, which is, you know, maybe you can try things without the Fitbit.
Yeah. And another thing I became, because I've read a lot on sleep, and there's, you know, the prescribed amount is 7 to 8 hours. And there's all sorts of scary studies about, you know, if you get people who sleep less than that are far more prone to heart attack, because apparently they've got the most massive amount of data studies on this, because when we do the clock switches, which is so much time, there's actually over 20% increase in heart attacks from people who have lost an hour's sleep. And then when it switches to the sleep, people gaining, it kind of evens out, times up. Yeah. So.
I see. So I hear you say that as you are further looking up researches and researching about this topic of sleep's effect on the human body, you also learned this information that how sleep may not only affect our memories, but also affect our other bodily conditions, such as heart health. And that there are researches with data showing how when the time changes, when people have to lose an hour, it has more negative effect on them, versus when people gain an hour, it has more beneficial effect on them.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I'd like to engage with Edwin next, if okay.
Listening.
Hi. So I think I want to. So the next topic I'm about to engage, I feel a little bit risky about it. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone. And I am trying to prepare myself to speak on it, in a constructive way, but also to speak my truth.
So there's another topic you want to talk about, and it feels a bit risky. and it's sort of outside your comfort zone, and you're sort of preparing yourself to sort of address this topic.
Yes. And as I hear myself on this, I can feel my heart rate is rising, and then I can feel that my chest is inflating a little bit. I can feel maybe a little bit flush in my bodily sensations.
So you can, as you check into your body, you can, and to address this topic, you can feel your heart rate going, your sort of a flush coming to you. So you can sense the bodily effect this is happening on maybe a little anxiety.
Yes. So this topic I would like to talk about is actually with Hawk, with Hawks as a reflector. I would like, I want to share my observations, and then I want to share my observations and maybe provide, share my observations. And why I want to do that is because I think this is something that is important for all of us. And I think this is, and I hope that, and I think this would be something that would be beneficial for Hawk to hear.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that you'd like to address something about the way Hawk does his reflections. You think it would be beneficial for him to hear these? Sounds like you have some observations that you'd like to share, and you're feeling a bit of anxiety about sharing those as well, but you think it would be constructive for him to hear.
Yes, and again, I want to also subject myself to critique about my approach too, because I think this is this can be a sensitive topic, and I fully accept that I may come off as arrogance for bringing this up.
So you're sensitive to how you may be seen, that you may be seen as arrogant to bring this up, and because it's a sensitive topic.
Yes. So I think my observation is that I think Hawk, when you are reflecting, you do add your own associations, or your like you hear somebody's sharing, and then you it triggers associations in you, and then you will share your associations.
Yeah, so you see that you feel it when Hawk is hearing someone, that he has associations to what he's hearing, and then he shares his associations, maybe instead of just reflecting what he's hearing.
Yes, and I think that is I think in a conversation, I think that's totally fine, because we build on each other's topics. We're not doing exactly like reflectings, but I think maybe during these sessions, I think the purpose might be more on reflections. Thus, it is important to distinguish what originated from us versus what originated from the speakers, and to be intentional about that.
Yeah, so in terms of what we're doing here, we're really trying to reflect back what we're hearing the other person say, and be very intentional about just reflecting that back. So you just, see that as important, versus kind of adding your own thoughts, feelings, etc.
Yes, and I feel I feel uncomfortable for bringing this up, but I think, and I think in other settings, what Hawk is doing is totally fine. I just think for this context, it might be constructive to share my observation.
Yeah, so you feel a little anxious about sharing this observation. You say that, just sort of not just adding your own stuff in a normal conversation, maybe it would be okay. But since here we're trying to just reflect back what we're saying, that you're kind of wanting to just share that observation. You feel a bit anxious about sharing it and don't want to kind of come off as arrogant or something.
Yes, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. I'll speak to Hawk then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad Charles sort of mentioned that, just shares his insight. Everything, you can say anything you want in the empathy circle. So I just want to say that you're free, everyone's free to say whatever they want, and they'll be heard to their satisfaction.
So I hear what you're saying is the empathy circle is this free space for people to say whatever they want, and they'll be heard to their satisfaction.
Yeah, and as a speaker, it's up to you to kind of say how you want to be heard. If you're not feeling heard, if you think, people are adding other stuff, that you can just say, hey, that's not what I said. And this is, let me say it again. I want to hear it back, kind of reflected. So as a speaker, you get to, kind of check to make sure that you're just fully heard the way you want to be heard.
So what I hear is that as a speaker, the speaker kind of has control and can check with the listener to whether they're heard. And if they're not, the speaker can say, hey, that's not what I said.
Right. And I heard Dean kind of do that. He shared with you, you reflected and kind of added a little bit of your own, comments to it. Dean said, that's not what I said. So he kind of just said how he wanted to be heard. And then I heard that you just kind of reflected back exactly like Dean said. So I really saw that you took that to heart, because like Charles, I did notice that you were kind of adding your own kind of interpretations, your own kind of stories into the reflection. Yeah.
So what I hear is that when you heard, when Dean was saying something and then I added something and then Dean said, that's not what I said, then you were appreciative that I was able to shift and just reflect what Dean was saying.
Yeah. And so it's sort of a learning process. We're trying to get better and better at reflecting. And so that's part of what we're doing in the circle, is how do we really hear each other? So for me, it's an ongoing learning experience. I kind of judge myself a lot too. It's like, am I really doing a good job of listening? So I think that's what we're trying to do, is really hear each other better. And I'm always trying to grow in that too. So yeah.
So what I hear is that, Edwin, you're saying as a practitioner of empathy circles, you want to improve your ability to listen, and every session makes you a better listener.
Yeah, and I feel very well heard. I felt very well reflected by you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And if you can reflect that last part that I just said.
And you felt very well heard by me in this previous session.
Yes, and a real gratitude for it too. I feel a real sense of gratitude for your listening.
And you feel a lot of gratitude for my listening.
Yep, feel fully heard. Thanks.
Thank you. Dean? Yes.
Yes.
When I brought up, when I heard you say that you grew up in a combative lawyer family, what came to me was an answer that I was searching for in relations to a young love.
I hear you saying that when I was referring to my own childhood, it triggered in you an answer to a young love.
Yes, because I was wondering why she would go from moments of like kindness and sweetness to just randomly combative, even when everything is calm. Like we could be in the park and there's a certain jab, and I didn't know why. And it was not my intention to add to briefly add the lawyer comment when you were okay. When you were reflecting, I guess that was just something that came out. However, I learned part of empathy circles is not to let the ego or self add a story that's not there.
I'm hearing you say that you found clarity in the understanding of this old memory of why suddenly when your girlfriend was quiet, she suddenly became competitive. And so therefore that triggered in you this desire to then mention it when you were doing reflective practice. You weren't doing it for any other reason than it had suddenly given you this understanding and you were reflecting on that understanding.
Yes. Like, for example, I grew up with Malcolm Perkins. He was a lawyer before he went off to Vietnam, an American lawyer. He went off to the Vietnam War, and then he came home learning martial arts and teaching it to thousands of students. And that was how he atoned for his experience in Vietnam. At the same time, even though he was trained as a lawyer, he was a great empathy, and he was not combative.
Yes, I heard that you had interaction with someone called Michael. Malcolm
Perkins.
And he was making atonement for his actions in Vietnam by teaching people martial arts.
Yeah.
And even though he was a lawyer, he didn't actually have a combative personality. He was just literally making atonements for his wrongdoings.
Yeah, he would have moments of being like a military dad and like stressing out his students only in that moment of preparing them for life. But once the class was over, there was this empathy person who would not attack his student even when he was teaching. And when the students attacked each other, he explained to them, no, this is why, don't do that.
So I'm hearing that he used his army conditioning to stress his students out for when he was training them, but he didn't actually use violence on them. And when he encountered violence student on student, he said to them, no, we shouldn't be doing this with violence. And this is the reason why we should be having empathy for each other.
Yes. So because I was 10 when I met him, so my automatic belief was that there are lawyers like him that are kind. I did not know that there are other people who practice law and may have children in that environment who maybe did not go through the training of empathy and the martial arts and the spirituality.
Yeah, so you had a representation in your mind that all lawyers were like him because he was a good role model. And you were quite surprised to find that actually some lawyers weren't like him, and actually they could be quite toxic and not have that empathy for their own family.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, and then my grandmother, her the martial arts teacher said, don't be a lawyer because they're liars. And so there was a huge confusion in her because she wanted to be a lawyer, but there was even more confusion in me when she passed on that teaching to me. And it took me over a decade to see that it's not the profession, it is the individual that needs training in like empathy circling.
Okay, so I'm hearing this family resonance was going on intergenerationally between you and your grandma about how it wasn't the profession that was the problem, it was the lack of empathy. So there can be such thing as good lawyers, it's just that some lawyers don't have empathy, so therefore they're not good people because of their lack of empathy, not because they're lawyers.
Yes, I'm heard, thank you.
I would just like to add that I've met some martial artists who are the most calming, warmest, gentlest, loving, aura just emanates so much energy that's positive about them. It's just overwhelming. And when you're in the presence of a true master, it's literally you just sit down and just, thank you, I want to listen, because they are wonderful human beings, aren't they?
Yes, yes.
Well, great. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, sorry. 10 seconds. We're going back. We're heading back. So thanks, everyone. Really enjoyed the circle with you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think everyone's back. What I'm going to do is somebody had somebody had asked about where the videos get posted. I'm just going to put that into the chat in case you want to bookmark this. And there's a link there to our cohort 8, our empathy circle facilitation training. And I'll say a little bit more about the next cohort. It starts in January for becoming a facilitator. So what we want to do now is just do a little bit of a debrief. We've got about a little bit less than 19 minutes. You can take up to a minute just to share what do you find are the benefits or maybe the challenges of the empathy circle? So you've gone through this process. You know, what was your experience with the empathy circle? Maybe what did you like? What did you, not like, or any criticisms of the process or something else you'd like to see, or, any rave reviews would be good too. See, maybe Susan, would you be willing to call on people and just sort of check on the time? So you get up to a minute each for each person. And you're muted, I think. Are you able to unmute?
Yes, I'm just going to start with what I see. So the first person I see is Victoria.
I'm so sorry. I was messaging someone in the group just as you were saying it. So you just want us to recap on our experience, is that?
Yeah, what it meant to you, good, bad, criticism, rave review of your experience.
From today?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So today was interesting as compared to last week because it was a different number of people. So that was interesting. It was 6 people instead of 4, which I think 4 or 5 seems more ideal than 6, just because of the amount of time you get to kind of go around. But I enjoyed meeting new people this time. And it was good to see the evolution of the first round being really nervous and more, and then the second round being more comfortable and getting some flow. So yeah, I had a positive experience, and it was nice to meet the rest of the people in the group.
Thank you, Victoria. Alex.
Yeah, I was in Victoria's group, and it was nice to see how, after the first round of kind of scoping out, and is this a safe space? How we then went a little bit deeper and had some nice conversations.
Thank you, Alex. Heidi?
So I was in that group as well. It's my first empathy circle, and it got better for me over time. I think at first it honestly felt a little just kind of forced and stilted, and people seemed a little less open to sharing. And then which I understand now why, because first I was like, 2 hours, Jesus, that's a long time. But I understand now that it does just take time. And by the end, I felt much more kind of connected.
Great. And Nancy, I think you need to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I felt the same thing, that at first it was a little stilted because a couple of people were brand new, but it just, as we went along, it flowed really beautiful. And well, I'm going to say that I thought it was really exciting to see that today's Susan's birthday and her son was in our group. That was really nice. That was really nice to experience. Happy birthday, Susan.
All right, Maclier, we need you to unmute.
Yes, so yes, I was in the same group, and I agree. In the beginning, we were a little bit stiff, but at the end, there was more heart space, and the energy was flowing. And I just, it's my first circle, empathy circle. So I see how much effort it takes to listen to an individual. And I really feel so bad to everybody I've been listening to so far. I wasn't really there. So, but I'm very thankful and grateful to be here.
Thank you. Diane, can you unmute?
Yeah, I would say the same a little bit, that it was, it took us a little time to get warmed up to each other. And, but by the end, you feel like these people who looked like total strangers are now not total strangers at all. They look like people you kind of know, a little, you know, you don't know that much, but you know, you have a connection there. And it was a little, this was the second time. The last time, I don't remember it being like I had to really keep reminding myself to stay on track of listening and focused a few times. And I'm not sure if it had to do with anything about the group itself, or maybe I'm a little more tired this time than I was last time. I don't know, but I enjoy the process, and I'd like to do it again.
Thanks, Diane. And Ron, you need to unmute, please.
Sure. Yeah, I haven't been here in a while. I did like the first 3 way back, Edwin, when you first came on. Yeah, the challenge part is it always feels very intense to me, almost like exercising. And like someone used the word stilted, I often use that word, that in a way it feels sometimes artificial or stilted. But having said that, it's not a problem. I actually like it. It feels like it's a good kind of container that causes a new kind of practice. I almost feel like, though, wanting to have either something like a break or a jumping around in the middle or something, just to get out of the intensity. But other than that, there's always magic that occurs. I always find there's interesting synchronicities and threads going on. And as I shared with my group, it almost feels like there's some kind of work going on underneath the surface that's not even apparent at times. Yeah, and it just brings back the importance of being able just to be with someone and listen to them and to practice that, and that while it's difficult, it's worthwhile to practice it.
Thanks, Ron. Charles?
Yes, hi. So yeah, this is my first time participating in this activity, and I really find I find it very inspiring. And I think being a silent listener was a very good experience, because it gives me the space to just fully practice listening to the others. And then I'm really appreciative of that. And then I think I definitely rocked the boat a little bit today with my group. But I hope that I think I appreciate the opportunity to actually be able to do that. So special thanks to Hawk for giving me the opportunity to do this. And thanks to the other members of the team to also be able to help us, Edwin especially, to help kind of like help me further explore that.
Thank you, Charles. Deborah, could you unmute, please?
Yeah. Yeah, it was my first time in an empathy circle today. I really, really enjoyed it. I felt our group, we shared deeply quite quickly, and it was really interesting to watch the process of learning, and I was especially struck by the notion of how, you know, the speaker takes responsibility to say how they want to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Edwin.
Yeah, it is like the first hour. Well, one reason for doing 2 hours is the first hour you're kind of getting familiar with the process. If you haven't done it before, there's a bit of anxiety around it, and after about an hour, you kind of settle into it and it starts going deeper. So that's one of the reasons for 2 hours. What really has been striking me in the last couple of weeks is we've been doing empathy circles all around the world from all different cultures. And it's been, people have been talking about their family issues, be it in the Americas, Europe, Africa, Asia. It's kind of like all the same, like we're all dealing with sort of the very similar issues. And you really get to hear that in the empathy circles. And it really just keeps reminding me about the common humanity of us all. We all are kind of dealing with the same sort of deeper issues. And I think that the empathy circle is a way for us all just to hear each other. So I think that's one of the real benefits, slowing things down, hearing each other. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Edwin, for everything, making this possible for all of us. Dean.
Well, yeah, I have to resonate with what the other members of my group have said. I do like the commonality that comes out in the conversations. Once you've learned to relax into the process and sit in the space and listen, you hear how we have so much more in common than we have that divides us. And in this divisive world nowadays, we need to learn this. And the Empathy Cafe style process gives us that opportunity to do this. And I did enjoy my group. I enjoyed the fact that Charles had the courage to stand up and come out of the cave and stand in the light, which triggered me off on a rant. So I do have this tendency, and I like the process because I can't rant. I have 5 minutes and that's it, which is very good. So yeah, thank you, Edwin, and thank you all the members of my group.
Thank you, Dean. Hock.
Yeah, thank you. This is my second empathy circle. My first one was like late September, early October. So the fact that there was this large time gap, empathy circling is a practice. It's like a muscle, and it's very easy for it to atrophy. And it was nice to hear other people's shares, because then something resonated in me. And the lesson I learned was not to add to a story that's not there. And that's something about dealing with the ego, to not let the ego add stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Hock. And Jessica.
So this was my first experience doing the empathy circle, and I really, I found it really a really lovely experience to listen to all of these people and the things that we got into. I feel lucky to have had them, have had everybody share, and to be able to work on the skill of kind of listening and taking that in a really focused, direct way. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jessica. Kelly.
Yeah, this was a nice session. I had the unique experience of having my mom as a facilitator, so that was cool. And I was gonna, someone already mentioned it, but just to honor my mother today, that's her birthday, and I'm happy that we could be a part of this sort of community activity, so that was cool. I also kind of have been, because there's no like context, one thing that I was saying in my group is I want to take this practice like into a context, because I feel like this is kind of more like a training ground kind of setting. But since that's what it is, I kind of tried to work on something that I've been thinking about a lot, and have been kind of discovering in the collective presencing sessions and practice that I've been doing regularly, which is instead of just trying to like say what I'm thinking, which is kind of easy for me to do because I'm just very verbose, is to try and think about what I can say that will give someone the tools to kind of share what I'm experiencing and not just dump a bunch of words on them. And that's a big shift for me that I'm trying to kind of work towards. And so I think today I kind of had some opportunities to try that. So that was beneficial. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So I'll just share, because it's my birthday. It was a really, my greatest birthday gift, I think, was my first time facilitating on the Stoa. And I guess, Edwin, you put my son, I know you didn't know he was my son, in my room. what a unique experience. So if any of you have adult children or parents that you could invite to the empathy circle, I strongly encourage it. What a gift. And Edwin, I just thank you so much for creating this practice.
Well, thanks, Susan. There was somebody, Victoria, did Victoria go?
Yeah, she was our first.
Oh, okay, that's why I see your video is off. Okay, yeah, we do actually on Fridays, we have an empathy cafe on how do we build a culture of empathy in our family. So it's specifically around, you know, bringing this practice into your family, and it can be just really beneficial, you know, sit down and have family empathy circles. And the other thing is the training. So I did put a link in there to the training. You can become a facilitator, and maybe Dean and Susan, who have, you know, both done the training. Do you want to say a few words just about how the training has been for you? Do you go ahead, Dean? Do you want to jump in? Just say, I guess.
Well, I found that it was a good way to gain insights as to what goes on behind, and the situations you find yourself in the training provide you the confidence to carry the timing, the keeping record of who's going what and what's going on, and holding the circle itself all on the go at the same time, which at first is daunting, but as the training goes on, that skill set becomes more and more ingrained until it's like learning the empathy muscle in the first place. It's hard work to start off with. Same with the training. It may appear hard work, but actually it's not as hard as it initially seems. It's actually quite a beneficial process, because it allows you to do that in other things in your life as well.
Yeah, so I could piggyback on Dean and just say that this very quickly has piggybacked onto other spheres of influence in my life. I just naturally want to bring them in. And I shared, I don't know where I shared it, but yesterday I had my first empathy circle, you know, on my own and I might have already said this, but I invited my mother-in-law and then two other women who didn't know. The three of them didn't know each other. And it's a great experience to get the training, because then you have the confidence to bring this into other spheres of influence, which I think anyone who's been through any of these previous cohorts would probably say the same thing. Yeah, it's been just very valuable tool for your tool belt of life.
Yeah, thanks. And Alex, do you want anything about facilitation?
Well, I've been to about 6 empathy circles, and I haven't had the training, but I did run my own circle based on this exact format in a more corporate setting with people from a corporate background, and it went very well. And it was unusual for them, but it went very well, and they're asking for more.
Oh, great. So as I mentioned, January 5th, we'll start a training cohort. We do add another 1 or 2 cohorts per month. And I'm talking with Peter that in January, maybe in this time slot, we could hold another training cohort. So I'm curious who might be interested in facilitator training, just to get a sort of a, okay, that seems great. Yeah. So it'd be, yeah, I'll mention that to Peter. And the idea would be is that we get a cohort trained through the Stoa, and that Stoa, that cohort could sort of keep these circles ongoing. So you kind of, because Peter is pretty busy, and, you know, I don't want to be to every single thing, you know, circle. So we can get a group that would kind of hold it. So I will mention that to Peter, and really glad to see the interest. So that's it for now. The video will be posted to that link there, the Empathy Center on Facebook. I'll post that again. You can see all kinds of that's a Facebook page there. So that's where we post it. And it is for educational purposes. Is that several people have mentioned it too, said, oh, I saw the video of the Stoa. And then that was like sort of a first step into taking part in this. So it's a little bit of a training too. It gives people a sense of how it works, and kind of helps alleviate some of that anxiety, that initial anxiety. So thanks for taking part in the recordings. So that's it for now. So I'll just get a sort of a twinkle fingers saying goodbye. If we can get a little group portrait here. Great. Okay. See you next time. 2 weeks we'll be here again.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Susan. Yay.
Yay, happy birthday,
Yeah.
Susan. Great.
Happy
thanks for-
birthday.
Yeah, take
Bye,
care, everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
The Discord link is in the chat. Yep.